Lena Cross had learned 3 important truths during her 7 years working palace maintenance. First, heating systems always failed during the coldest nights. Second, oil stains on work uniforms were permanent. And third, she possessed an almost supernatural ability to look out of place at formal events. All 3 truths proved devastatingly accurate as she stood in the grand hall of Nightfall Keep, tugging at a collar that seemed designed to prevent oxygen intake. The annual Alpha Summit had transformed the palace into something between political theater and an expensive reception. Representatives from 32 packs filled the space, their scents creating a complex tapestry of hierarchy and tension. Lena, representing her maintenance company because her supervisor decided someone technical should monitor the new climate systems, felt spectacularly invisible. She'd positioned herself near a stone pillar, trying to be present but unseen. The Nightfall Pack commanded attention. Their Alpha King, Darian Blackwood, sat on a throne carved from obsidian, his presence alone demanding submission. Dark hair, golden eyes that missed nothing, power radiating from him like heat. Beside him stood his daughter, and Lena felt automatic sympathy for children trapped in formal circumstances. Princess Arya couldn't have been more than 7, dressed in ceremonial robes that probably weighed more than she did. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, her small face set in grim determination. But Arya wasn't just the Alpha King's daughter. She was an Alpha herself. Rare, powerful, destined to rule. Even at 7, her scent carried unmistakable markers of dominance. The ceremony proceeded with diplomatic speeches. Ambassador Thorne had been talking for 17 minutes about border treaties when Princess Arya's head snapped sideways with sudden focus. The young Alpha's entire body went rigid, nostrils flaring as she scented something. Someone. Lena, still thinking about temperature differentials, didn't realize the princess was staring directly at her through 200 assembled wolves. Then Arya moved, not walked but ran. Actually ran, ceremonial robes flying behind her, straight through the crowd. Representatives parted in confused waves. Conversations died. Ambassador Thorne stopped mid-sentence. Lena had 2 seconds before Princess Arya crashed into her with full-body enthusiasm. Small arms wrapped around Lena's waist, a face pressed against her jacket, and a voice exclaimed with pure joy, "It's you! It's the kind lady!" The hall descended into absolute silence. Every eye focused on Lena, and she stood frozen, looking down at the small Alpha princess attached to her. A memory surfaced, 3 weeks ago, the market, a child crying by the fountain. The memory 3 weeks ago. Lena's lunch break, a small child sobbing by the fountain in the market square, overwhelmed by crowds, clearly lost. Lena had sat beside her, asked if she wanted company while she waited for help. When the girl had been too scared to talk, Lena told stories, mundane disasters from her work. The time she'd accidentally reversed heating flow during a formal dinner, leaving 50 wolves either freezing or sweating. The incident with the Alpha King's study and the steam valve that destroyed an antique rug. She'd kept talking until the child laughed, then kept going until palace guards arrived. 15 minutes of basic decency for a scared child. Apparently, the scared child had been an Alpha princess, and she remembered. Alpha King Darian rose from his throne with controlled movement that was more threatening than shouting. His golden eyes locked onto Lena with intensity that made her knees weak. Guards shifted position with deadly precision. Lena looked down at Princess Arya, who looked up with absolute delight, amber eyes bright with recognition. Then the Alpha King spoke, voice carrying across the hall. "You will release my daughter. Now." But Arya tightened her grip. "No! Father, this is the kind lady I told you about. She told me about the broken heating and the cold people." Something shifted in Darian's expression. Recognition. Calculation. He descended from the throne with measured grace. "You will accompany me to a private audience. Immediately." Technically a request. Actually a command. Lena attempted to bow while a princess clung to her, achieved neither successfully, and nodded. "Of course, Your Majesty." Arya looked up at her father, keeping one hand on Lena's jacket. "Father, this is the nice lady." She made me laugh when I was scared. Yes, darling. Darian's voice softened fractionally. We're going to discuss exactly that. The truth. The walk through palace corridors felt like a condemned prisoner's march, except the prisoner usually didn't have a cheerful 7-year-old holding their hand and chattering about how excited she was. Guards flanked them, expressions calculating the most efficient methods, to eliminate an Omega who threatened royalty. They entered a private chamber. Comfortable seating, a crackling fireplace, the sense that important decisions happened here. Darian settled into a chair and gestured to a seat. Arya immediately climbed into Lena's lap, forcing awkward adjustment while trying to maintain dignity. The Alpha King watched with an unreadable expression. Explain exactly what happened at the market 3 weeks ago. Lena swallowed. I was on lunch break. I saw her crying by the fountain. She looked lost and scared, and people were ignoring her. I couldn't just walk past a scared child. So you approached a distressed child you didn't know in a crowded public space. Alone. I stayed in public view the entire time. I just sat nearby and asked if she wanted company while we waited for help. She was too upset to talk, so I told her stories about work, about my mistakes. Arya contributed enthusiastically. She told me about when she made all the rooms too hot and everyone got sweaty, and when she fixed the fireplace but burned the expensive rug. Despite everything, Darian's mouth twitched. I stayed until guards arrived, Lena continued. The whole thing was maybe 15 minutes. I didn't know who she was. I just saw a child who needed help. Something shifted in the Alpha King's expression. You didn't recognize her. Should I have? I'd only been in Nightfall Keep for 2 days, working with technical staff in lower levels. I don't generally assume crying children in markets are royalty. Darian studied her with golden eyes. My daughter does not typically demonstrate such enthusiasm toward strangers. She's cautious even with pack members, slow to trust. Her tutors consider it appropriate for an alpha of her standing. His gaze dropped to Arya, curled comfortably against Lena. She spoke of you for 3 weeks. Asked repeatedly when the kind lady might visit. I dismissed it as childhood fancy. He paused. She drew pictures of you. Announced to her combat instructor she wanted to learn about heating systems because her friend knew about them. Told the entire council that being kind was more important than being strong. Lena stared. I need to understand why my daughter, an alpha, destined to rule, trusts an Omega enough to run through a formal summit and embrace you in front of 32 packs. The emphasis on Omega wasn't cruel, just factual. But it highlighted the impossibility. Alphas didn't attach to Omegas like this, especially not Alpha royalty. Lena looked down at Arya, who dozed off against her chest. Honestly, Your Majesty, I have no idea. I just didn't want her to be scared and alone. That seemed like the bare minimum of being a decent person. Silence stretched. Finally, most people who encountered the lost Alpha Princess would have seen opportunity. Political leverage, ransom potential, favor to gain. His eyes fixed on her. You saw a scared child and told her jokes until she laughed. The sweaty dinner story is pretty funny, Lena offered weakly. Darian smiled, brief, genuine, transforming his face. You're either remarkably genuine or an extremely skilled actor. I'm terrible at acting. I once called in sick and my supervisor knew I was lying within 3 words. That is becoming apparent. A guard knocked. Your Majesty, the princess's attendants are concerned. Her afternoon lessons are cancelled. He looked at Arya sleeping against Lena, then back at her. My daughter has decided you're staying, and I've learned arguing with her when she's this determined achieves nothing. He paused. Your company won the heating system upgrade contract. Would you be willing to serve as on-site engineer? It would require residence in the guest wing, proximity to the royal family, and dealing with the fact that my daughter has adopted you without consulting anyone. You want me to live here? In the palace? I want to determine if my daughter's instincts are correct about you. That requires more than 15 minutes. He stood. You're free to decline, but I suspect refusing would disappoint Arya considerably. Lena looked at the sleeping princess, thought about her cramped apartment. wondered what her supervisor would say. Then she looked back at Darian, whose expression remained neutral, but posture had shifted to something almost hopeful. I guess I should request my things be sent over. Integration. The palace guest wing was significantly nicer than anywhere Lena had lived. Actual windows overlooking gardens, furniture that seemed grown rather than built, water pressure that defied physics. She'd been there 2 weeks when Princess Arya discovered the maintenance tunnels. Lena was 3 levels deep in the heating infrastructure when she heard, "Lena, are you down there? I can hear you thinking about hot air." She looked up to see Arya's face peering through a maintenance hatch, dark hair hanging around her head. She was supposed to be in literature, lessons. "How did you find me?" "I listened for tool sounds. Can I come down? This looks more interesting than reading about dead people who wrote boring poems." Lena considered numerous reasons this was terrible. Safety, protocol, tutors discovering their student had vanished. Then she looked at Arya's hopeful expression. "There's a ladder 2 meters to your left. Be careful." Arya descended with fearless efficiency and stood beside her, looking around with fascination at ducts, conduits, and monitoring equipment. "What are you fixing?" "That panel runs about 8,000 volts when active," Lena said, gently redirecting Arya's hand, "which would make your hair stand up before you became a very small pile of ashes. Let's look at this instead." She pulled up a holographic display showing airflow patterns, colored streams representing different atmospheric compositions for different areas. "See how this section provides normal air for wolves, but this adjacent corridor needs special filtration for the visiting Fae delegation?" Arya studied the display with intense concentration. How does it know not to mix them? Pressure differentials, layered filtration, and about 6 redundant safety systems. Plus a really paranoid engineer who triple checks everything because mixing those atmospheres would create exciting explosions. You're that engineer. I'm definitely paranoid enough. She spent 20 minutes explaining systems in terms a 7-year-old could understand, creative analogies involving rivers, waterfalls, arguing neighbors needing walls between them. Arya asked questions with relentless curiosity, actually caring about answers rather than being polite. They were discussing carbon dioxide scrubbing when a voice called down, tight with panic. "Princess Arya, Princess, if you can hear me, please respond." Arya's ears flattened slightly. "That's Instructor Marith. She's nice, but worries a lot." Probably because her student disappeared during a lesson. "You should answer before palace security locks down the entire sector." Arya called up, and moments later they emerged to find her tutor, 3 guards, 2 attendants, and Lord Kale, the Chancellor, whose expression suggested he was mentally composing strongly worded memos about visiting Omegas who enabled royal truancy. "Princess," Instructor Marith said, relief and exasperation mixing, "you cannot simply leave lessons to explore maintenance tunnels. Your father will be informed." Arya maintained impressive diplomatic neutrality learned from watching Darian. "I was pursuing educational opportunities in applied environmental engineering. Lena taught me about pressure differentials and atmospheric composition for multiple species habitats." Lord Kale's expression suggested he recognized political maneuvering, even from a 7-year-old. "Educational opportunities," he repeated carefully. "She actually learned quite a bit," Lena offered. She correctly explained how the palace maintains separate atmospheric zones, including chemical reasons why you can't mix certain gases. "Because explosions," Arya added helpfully. "Very exciting explosions." The Chancellor looked between them, calculated competing priorities, and gestured to guards. "Escort Princess Arya back to her quarters. Inform His Majesty that his daughter is safe and has been pursuing educational opportunities." The way he said it made clear what he thought of that excuse. "Miss Cross, you'll accompany me." They walked through corridors in deliberate silence. Lord Kyle finally spoke when they reached a private office. "You've been here 2 weeks. In that time, Princess Arya has skipped 3 formal lessons to find you, convinced her combat instructor to demonstrate defensive techniques using environmental hazards, and announced to the council she's decided to pursue engineering rather than traditional royal studies." He fixed Lena with a stare perfected over decades. "You're either a remarkably bad influence or exactly what she needs. I haven't determined which." "The pressure differential explanation really was educational," Lena said. I'm sure. He was quiet. Princess Arya has been isolated. Her mother died when she was 3. Her father is Alpha King, which means he has approximately 15 minutes per day for being simply a father rather than a sovereign. The palace staff are loyal, but formal. Her tutors treat her like porcelain that might break. He leaned forward. Then you arrived, and apparently decided to treat her like a normal child who might enjoy learning about exploding atmospheric mixtures. Is that bad? I honestly don't know, but the Alpha King has noticed. Everyone has noticed. The princess, who barely smiled before, now laughs loudly enough to disrupt court proceedings when explaining something you taught her. His expression shifted. You're either very good at long-term manipulation, which I doubt given your complete inability to navigate basic political courtesy, or you're genuinely kind to a child who desperately needed someone to be simply kind without ulterior motive. I just like teaching, and she asks really good questions. Lord Kale studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, brief but genuine. Keep teaching her, Miss Cross, but perhaps inform her tutors before she disappears into maintenance shafts. It reduces security alerts. Connection. That evening, Lena was invited to join the royal family for informal dinner, a private dining room where Arya monopolized conversation by explaining everything she'd learned about environmental systems. Alpha King Darian listened with an expression cycling between amused, exasperated, and something softer that Lena caught when he looked at her while his daughter was distracted. After Arya was taken to bed by attendants, still talking about air circulation, Darian gestured for Lena to remain. They stood on a balcony overlooking gardens that glowed softly with bioluminescent plants. She's different since you arrived, Darian said without looking at her. Lighter, more curious about things beyond duty and protocol. A pause. I don't know if I should thank you or worry about what happens when you eventually leave. I signed a 6-month contract, Lena said. I'm not leaving soon. 6 months isn't forever. Darian turned to face her, and Lena saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. Vulnerability carefully revealed. She's already attached to you. When you leave, then we'll handle that when it happens, Lena interrupted gently. But right now, she's happy. Isn't that worth something? The Alpha King looked at her for a long moment, golden eyes reflecting the garden's soft light. Yes, he said quietly. It's worth quite a lot. Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of connection that went beyond Arya, beyond professional courtesy. Lena felt it like a physical pull, the kind that made Omegas instinctively respond to powerful alphas. But this was different. This wasn't just biology. This was recognition. Darian seemed to feel it too. His posture shifted, moving incrementally closer, scent washing over her, pine and winter night, and something uniquely him. Lena, he said, voice dropping lower, rougher. I need you to understand something. What? My daughter isn't the only one who's become attached. Her heart hammered. Your Majesty. Darian. When it's just us, I'm Darian. Darian, she repeated, the name feeling dangerous and intimate. I'm an Omega. You're an Alpha King. This, whatever this is, it's impossible. I've spent 2 weeks watching you with my daughter, watching you treat her like she's precious instead of political, watching you light up when you explain heating systems like they're the most fascinating thing in the world. He stepped closer. Watching you be genuinely, completely yourself, without calculation or agenda. His hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek with unexpected gentleness. I haven't felt anything like this since Arya's mother died. And before you say it's impossible, I don't care about possible. I care about what's real. Lena's breath caught. The court will never accept. The court will accept what I tell them to accept. I'm the Alpha King. That means something. And when they say I'm manipulating you, using your daughter to get close, then I'll tell them to bring evidence or shut up. His thumb traced her jawline. I've spent decades reading people, Lena. I know manipulation when I see it. This isn't that. What is it then? Honestly, I'm not entirely sure yet, but I'd like to find out. Before Lena could respond, Before she could process what was happening, Darian leaned down and kissed her. Gentle, careful, asking rather than demanding. Lena made a sound that might have been surprise or surrender, her hands coming up to grip his shirt as she kissed him back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Darian rested his forehead against hers. "Tell me I'm not alone in this." "You're not alone," Lena whispered. "You're definitely not alone." The Threat 3. Weeks later, Lena was reviewing heating protocols in her quarters when the emergency alert pierced through the palace's usual calm. Not standard maintenance alarm, but something sharper, more urgent, accompanied by flashing lights that meant catastrophic threat. She was moving before conscious thought, heading toward the secure wing where Arya's chambers were located. She made it 3 corridors before a guard redirected her firmly back. "Guest wing is in lockdown. Return to your room, seal the door, wait for all clear." "What's happening?" "Security situation. Move." Lena moved but immediately accessed the palace's environmental systems diagnostic network, which she had legitimate clearance for, and started tracing unusual activity. It took 4 minutes to realize something was very wrong. Life support. Readings showed unexpected fluctuations, movement patterns that didn't match normal operations, and most concerning, a bypass activation in the atmospheric separation system near the royal family's private chambers. Someone who knew palace systems had deliberately created a gap in security protocols. Her comm panel chimed with an incoming call from Lord Kale. "Miss Cross, I need you to listen carefully. We have a situation involving Princess Arya. Hostile actors have breached the palace using maintenance access routes, specifically environmental service tunnels. They appear to have significant knowledge of palace infrastructure." Lena felt her stomach drop. "Where's Arya?" "Secured in her chambers with 2 guards, but the hostiles are moving toward that sector using pathways that bypass standard security." "I can help," Lena said, pulling up holographic displays. "I know the environmental systems better than anyone. I can see the breach pattern. They're using atmospheric maintenance, shafts. The Alpha King is demanding I evacuate you immediately for your safety, but I'm making an executive decision he's going to yell at me about later. Can you guide our security teams through those routes faster than the hostiles can move?" "I can do better. I can make those tunnels extremely uncomfortable for anyone trying to use them." "Do it." Lena's fingers flew across controls. She started redirecting atmospheric flows, creating pressure differentials that would make certain tunnels difficult to traverse, strategically venting areas to drop temperatures, introducing harmless but irritating atmospheric compositions. Through monitoring systems, she watched hostile movement patterns stutter and redirect as they encountered her modifications. But they were still advancing, still getting closer to Arya's chambers. She made a decision that was either brave or catastrophically stupid. "Lord Kale, I can reach Arya's chambers faster than your security teams using maintenance routes. I know every access point, every shortcut. I can move through those tunnels faster than anyone because I literally designed half the modifications." "Absolutely not. You're a civilian, not security personnel. The Alpha King would want his daughter protected by someone who knows palace infrastructure better than the people trying to reach her. I'm not going to fight anyone. I'm going to get to Arya and guide her through maintenance routes these hostiles don't know exist." Pause. "If you die doing this, I'm going to have a very uncomfortable conversation with His Majesty. If I die doing this, that conversation will be the least of your problems." She was already moving, grabbing a portable diagnostic tablet and heading for the nearest maintenance access. "Keep security teams pushing from their position. I'll contact you when I have Arya." The maintenance tunnels felt different in emergency conditions, pressure fluctuations making her ears pop. Temperature, variations cycling between uncomfortably warm and distinctly chilly. She moved through infrastructure with practiced efficiency, using access routes she'd mapped during optimization work, traveling through spaces not on official schematics. She reached the junction near Arya's chambers in 8 minutes, emerging through a maintenance hatch into a service corridor. 2 palace guards stood outside Arya's door, weapons ready. Both swung toward Lena with rapid targeting that suggested shoot-first protocol. "Miss Cross," one guard said, recognition stopping immediate violence. "How did you—" "Maintenance tunnels. There are hostiles using the same routes about 4 minutes behind me." I'm getting Arya out through pathways they don't know about." The door opened before she finished. Arya stood there with 2 attendants behind her, expression showing more anger than fear. "Lena, did you make all the air weird? The guards won't tell me what's happening. Remember when I explained how maintenance tunnels connect throughout the palace? How there are routes that go places most people don't know about?" Arya's ears perked forward with understanding. "The secret paths you showed me on the diagrams." "Exactly. We're going to take a walk through some of them right now, very quickly, and it's going to be an adventure." She looked at the guards. "Standard evacuation routes are compromised. I can get her to the secure bunker near the throne room using environmental maintenance access." One guard started to object. Then his comm crackled with Lord Kael's voice. "Authorization confirmed. Cross, proceed. Guards, maintain position and prepare for hostile contact." Lena held out her hand. Arya took it without hesitation, small fingers gripping hers with complete trust. "This is like the stories you tell," Arya said as they moved into maintenance access. "The ones where everything goes wrong, but you fix it. Exactly like that. Except this time, you're helping me remember which direction to go." They moved through infrastructure quickly but carefully, Lena choosing routes that required climbing but weren't dangerous, passages uncomfortable but navigable for a child. Arya kept up remarkably well, her alpha hearing tracking sounds Lena couldn't detect, occasionally whispering warnings. "Footsteps that way," or "voices behind us." They emerged in a service corridor 2 levels below the throne room, just as palace security teams cornered the hostile group in the environmental tunnels Lena had deliberately funneled them into. Lord Kael was waiting with Alpha King Darian, who looked at Lena with an expression that cycled rapidly through relief, fury, gratitude, and something else entirely before he dropped to his knees and pulled Arya into an embrace that looked almost painful in intensity. "Father, we took the secret paths," Arya said excitedly. "Lena knew all the best routes, and we climbed through the big air tunnel." "I'm aware," Darian said, voice tight. He looked up at Lena over his daughter's head, and she saw moisture in his golden eyes that might have been tears or fury, or both. "We will discuss your decision to run toward danger rather than away from it. At length. Later." "Looking forward to it," Lena said weakly, adrenaline finally crashing. Aftermath. The aftermath involved extensive security debriefings, where Lena explained exactly how she'd used environmental systems to herd hostiles into capture zones. Several tense conversations with Lord Kael about appropriate civilian responses to security threats, and one very long private audience with Alpha King Darian. They stood in his private office, where he alternated between thanking her and looking like he wanted to shake her for taking unnecessary risks. "You could have been killed," he said finally. "I couldn't not try," Lena said simply. She stopped, trying to find words for what Arya had become to her. "She's important. Not because she's a princess, because she's herself." Darian was quiet for a long moment. The hostiles were from the Purity Council, extremists who view cooperation between designations as unnatural. They targeted Arya specifically because her attachment to you, an Omega, represents everything they oppose. He met her eyes. "You became a vulnerability in her security profile. I know. I understand if you need me to leave." "Leave?" Darian's expression shifted to something almost like anger. "Lena, you used your knowledge of systems you've spent weeks optimizing to protect my daughter. You moved through palace infrastructure like you built it yourself. You kept her calm and safe while guiding her through maintenance tunnels most adults would find terrifying." He moved closer. "Lord Kael wants to offer you a permanent position as Chief Environmental Engineer. The Security Council wants to formalize your access to palace systems because you use them more effectively than anyone else." He stopped, something vulnerable crossing, his face. "And I want you to stay because my daughter is happier than I've seen her since her mother died. And because watching you with her makes me remember that trust and kindness matter more than protocol." Pause. "And because I've fallen in love with you somewhere between heating system explanations and watching you risk your life for my child without hesitation." Lena stared at him, processing implications. "You want me to stay permanently?" I want to see what happens if we stop pretending this is temporary. If we acknowledge that sometimes children recognize what adults are too careful to see, that you're exactly what this family needed." He smiled, small but genuine. "Even if you do make terrible jokes about sweaty dinner guests." Lena laughed, the sound breaking through tension. "I have very good jokes, actually. Debatable." Darian pulled her close, hands settling at her waist. "But I'm willing to hear more of them, preferably for the foreseeable future. The court will accept that their Alpha King has chosen an Omega who saved his daughter's life and makes her laugh. And if they don't," his eyes flashed gold, wolf rising close to the surface, "they'll learn very quickly that I don't negotiate when it comes to family." "Family," Lena repeated softly. "If you'll have us." She kissed him instead of answering with words, fierce and certain and full of promises neither of them were quite ready to voice yet. When they broke apart, Darian rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said quietly. "I know it's fast. I know there are 1,000 political complications. But I love you, and I want you to stay. Not as the engineer. Not as Arya's friend. As mine." "As yours," Lena agreed, feeling something settle in her chest that had been restless for years. "I love you too. Both of you." From down the hall, they heard Arya's voice calling that she'd figured out a new pressure differential calculation and needed Lena to verify her math immediately because it was very important. "Duty calls," Lena said. "It always does." Darian smiled. "But now, we answer it together." 6 months later, Lena stood in the throne room during another annual summit, wearing formal attire that actually fit, because she'd finally admitted she needed appropriate clothing for an Alpha King's mate. Princess Arya sat beside her father's throne in a smaller chair added specifically for her. When she saw Lena in the crowd, she didn't run, but she did wave with enthusiasm that made several ambassadors smile. After the ceremony, when Lena joined the royal family for private dinner that had become routine rather than exceptional, Arya explained in detail how Lena had taught her to calculate optimal air pressure for different species. "Everything with you is educational," Darian said to Lena, but he was smiling. When Arya was distracted by dessert, Darian's hand found Lena's under the table, fingers intertwining in a gesture that had become familiar over recent months. Later, standing on the same balcony where they'd talked months ago, Darian pulled Lena close. "She told me today that she's glad I let her run to you in the throne room, that it was the best decision she ever made." "She was 7, Lena pointed out. How many major decisions had she made? More than you'd think, but this one was definitely her best." He looked down at her. "Mine too." Lena kissed him, thinking about how she'd arrived at Nightfall Keep, expecting to upgrade some heating systems and leave, and instead found herself adopted by a princess, loved by an Alpha King, and somehow building a life in a palace where she'd learned that sometimes the best engineering projects aren't about fixing broken systems. They're about creating spaces where people can breathe easier together. From inside, they heard Arya's voice calling that she'd figured out a new calculation and needed Lena to verify her math immediately. "Duty calls," Lena said. "It always does," Darian agreed. But he was smiling as they went inside together, toward the child who'd seen something worth running toward when the entire palace froze, and who'd been right about what she'd found.